national level. With us in the studios this morning to, of course, further the conversation, because of the first two parts, we had no representation from the subnational entities. We'd like to welcome His Excellency Engineer Abdullahi Sule, Executive Governor of Nasarawa State. Your Excellency, glad to have you this morning.
Thank you very much.
Okay. All right, and then hopefully in the course of the conversation, we'll be joined by two other guests who are taking part in the first part of our conversation, and also in the second part of the conversation. The excerpt that we took a moment ago was pretty brief, Your Excellency, but to provide further context, of course, we know, and you are also aware of the debate in the polity about the focus of development at the subnational level. There are, of course, claims that state governments are focusing on flyovers and bridges and other things that may not have a direct impact on the lives and livelihoods of citizens, as well as their well-being. And this is all coming against the backdrop of the staggering numbers of poor Nigerians. The government was previously targeting 100 million Nigerians to take out of poverty over a 10-year period, but now we're dealing with some 133 million Nigerians who are poor. And the argument is that these poor Nigerians are to be found in states and local governments. And that while the federal government, of course, making its own mistakes, but striving mightily to ensure that all goes well and that all the levers are pulled up to ensure that development comes, that will not appear to be the case in most of the subnational entities. So that's why we're having this conversation, to see our state governments, our local governments focusing on real development that will boost the human development indices, and that if we were to go out today and ask common Nigerians, ordinary Nigerians, even the middle-class Nigerians, to say, how well is your government impacting on you? The answers, of course, would not be quite complimentary. So, Your Excellency, what's happening?
Thank you very much for having me, and I'm happy that I'm actually from both sides of the angle. I was purely in the private sector, and I was one of those that will pass uncomplimentary comments. You know, each time government was discussed, each time state governors and local government funds were discussed, and this and that. I'm glad now I'm on the other side that I can see. That's why they say when you are outside the cycle, you think the cycle is empty until you get in there. In reality, there are so many complications. There is lack of focus in most of these, both the regional as well as the local government issues. And I will always make reference to ourselves, the one that I know the most. In Nasarawa State, we are one of the 13, we have 13 local governments out of the 774 that are recognized by the Constitution and in Nigeria. But then within the state, for political reasons, another 18 development areas were created. And there is, again, another debate between recognition of the development areas within the state, because they were actually created as a result of the law by the State Assembly. And I think it's a similar thing in so many other states. So there is already insufficient funding or insufficient funds for development at the local government level. Now, development areas were created. And to give you an example, if at a local government you have a total of, say, 200 staff, believe me, most of the development areas, some local government have 2, because, you know, I told you we have 18 in total. So we have 2 development areas. So you end up now having, instead of 200 staff to manage, you now have probably 600 or more to manage. So we created more headache for ourselves, you know, by doing that. So that's what I'm telling you, lack of focus, political reasons. Maybe some other people may say population. You are trying to create employment by all means, even though you don't have the resources to fund the employment. And all kinds of reasons created this. And that basically, to be honest with you, is the part of the problem. But the idea of governors are touching local government funds, this and that, I don't know which governors are doing that. In Nasarawa State, for instance, the local government don't even have enough resources, because the way it is that the local government funds come directly to the local government account, the state government funds come directly to the state government account, and they go and sit down with the Ministry of Local Government and do what they call JAC. They have their JAC meetings, They discussed how they were going to share the money. And believe me, in our own case in Nasarawa State, 70 to 80% of the time, they don't have enough to share. So they still refer to the state, for the state again to look inwards and see, in most cases, either out of our IGR or out of other sources, to look now and complement and then put more into the local government. So that's why when they say state governors are touching local government funds, in our own state, we just smile. So I think that is the number one issue. The number two part is really to look at the competence of some of these leaders at the regional level. The commitment of those leaders at the regional level. How committed are they? How visionary are they? What plans do they have before coming, apart from just, I want to be a local government chairman? But it also goes really to the governors. What plan do I have to be a governor? So let me just not hit the local government alone, because sometimes it also goes to us. So outside being, I want to be a governor, what else do you have to offer? What plans do you have on ground? Do you even understand the problems on ground? How do you intend to actually approach these issues? So I think these are the basic things that are happening to us, and that's responsible for this lack of development that we are having in the country. That's my own true analysis of it.
What does Your Excellency then think, since some of the state executives go on to create development areas, additional development areas, and again, despite the seeming autonomy of some local government areas, they still refer to state executives for some kind of fund assistance. So what does Your Excellency then think about the tier structure? Do you think it's sufficient enough to drive development? Because the philosophy behind it anyway is that at the 3 tiers of governance, development is expected to cascade down to the grassroots, but that's not happening at the moment. So do you still see that structure relevant for development to happen?
Well, it is. Let me take one point you said. When you say that the development is not happening, that may not be correct, and I will address that. But
as it should.
Well, as it should, you require 2 basic things I have informed you. If a chairman of local government wants to be chairman, somebody campaigning to be chairman, I think we should design some kind of method of trying to understand whether this person really understands what it means to be a chairman of local government. Just the same way we do employment in institutions. You want to be a lecturer, can you actually lecture? Do you understand the subject? Right now there is nothing like that. Okay, so I think that is on one side. The second part of it that you are talking about is the understanding of the finances. Like you mentioned, do we really think that the structure of this autonomy is working? It cannot work until you take care of all these other indices that I have mentioned to you. Right now, there are some, and I'm sorry to say, there are some local government officials that believe once they have resources, it's for them to enjoy themselves with it. Somebody will not say, okay, today I have received 100 million coming to the local government. So how do we actually take care of this? How much of this is going to go to agriculture? How much of this is going to go to education? How much will go to health? How much is go to that? So the person will just look at it that, how much am I going to use, for other reasons that will either benefit me or benefit my supporters, politically. So I think that's part of the commitment that I have mentioned to you. And again, I always say I don't want to just hit the local government. This happens also even at the state level, at the executives level. You have these, you have some ministries and all that. So the autonomy is a wonderful idea, just like we have wonderful ideas in Nigeria. But the process of implementation of that is always, there are certain things that need to be in place before we go into the deep implementation.
Okay, Your Excellency, I think the first reaction I would have is to commend your candor in responding to the issues around lack of development at the subnational level. You have not attempted to say, no, this is not true, X, Y, Z, to defend. You've touched on, I believe so far, very cardinal issues. And the impression is that you were part of the conversation in the first and second segments that we had on this program, because these are some of the issues our guests were also talking about. But more importantly, of course, you've used your private sector background as well as the fact of being an insider now to touch on the issues. But let's take one of them. You said, look, whether at the state level, that state governor, or at the local government level, the key issues we are supposed to worry about for somebody to say, I want to run a local government: competence, commitment, and vision. And you can frame all of that around the leadership recruitment process, which is what our guests have talked about. So, beginning with the local governments, it is also the view that the emasculation of that tier of government has resulted in the process by which the state chief executive now determines who becomes the local government apparatchik. That is to say, become a local government chairman or a councillor and so on and so forth, without recourse to the key attributes that you talked about: competence, commitment, and vision. You said just now, if you want to lecture, you must be certified fit and competent to lecture. So why is it that if you want to become a local government chairman, it appears that state governors or state governors do not seem to follow this? So that's part of the issue. We'd like you to respond to that.
Thank you very much. There are two reasons for that. You know, in Nigeria, we have two kinds of governors: a governor that is already living his second term and a first-time governor. And I happen to be one for now.
Which one? Are you living? Or
no. I'm the one looking for second term.
Okay.
So the pressure on the governor looking for second term is far more, I'm being very frank with you, than a governor who is living. El-Rufai had tried this, most likely in his second term, when he said, let us follow the qualification. You want to be chairman of local government? I want to interview. He tried it in his second term, not first term. You want to be a local government chairman? The same thing with teachers. I think he tried that. You know, you want to do that. I want to know you have so and so qualification. We want to interview you. You saw the cry and all the accusations. It's against the law for him to do that. It's this and that. You know what went through. Now, as a first-time governor, I'm very honest with you. The moment you try that, it will not be cry. People will just shy away from you. That's it. This is not a competent governor. This governor doesn't understand what is happening. This and that, and they will do. So most of us governors, this is just the fact, sometimes we succumb to some of these gimmicks. Okay, and that is probably the biggest problem we have in the state. In fact, at one point I made a point. I say, you know, in Nigeria, if they will just come up with something and say, you know, every governor, no second term, 5 years, finish, go. So there won't be any pressure for you to do things you don't want to do. You know, so everybody will just do that because there is so much pressure on that. You want to do that, oh, you are going for election. Oh, it's election period. Oh, you can't do that. Oh, that man, yes, he's not competent, but yet he knows how to gather votes for you. So if you do that, these are the basic problems. You know, and it doesn't matter who you are, you will succumb to some of those pressures. Unless if you say, to hell with it, I don't want it. You know, I'm just going to go my one term, finish and leave. If you say that, then maybe we'll achieve this. So I think the first time is to find a way to reduce that pressure on a governor on that. I'm also a victim. You know, I come across some local government chairman. I really know deep down inside me that this is not a local government chairman that will do well. You know, but then no. All the major stakeholders combine and put pressure and say, that's the person we need. If we want to get this election, he is the one with the people. He knows how to. I remember, you know, the Adedebu. Is it Adedebu? They call him the late Adedebu in Ibadan.
Adedebu. Lamidi.
Yes. You know,
the guy is the commander.
So some of the things they used to say about him, you know, so he's the one that will give you the vote. Forget about competence. Forget about this. Forget about. So that's the kind of thing that we go through. So I think that is the first step. You know, so if we can be able to take that out, then there are so many other governors, even at the second term level, he's living, but then he still wants to bring somebody that he wants. And he doesn't want that person to have problems. So sometimes he also succumbs to some of these pressures. You know, so I think these are the basic problems. So we have to look at the fundamental issues and address them, you know, before we go down to that. Because you end up, again, bringing people, you know, who you know deep down inside you, that these people don't have the capacity to be able to drive development. So we end up carrying out a lot of things we do today in Nasarawa State are things that local government should do. That's what we are doing as a state.
Okay, excellent. So we have two other guests that have joined this conversation. I'll quickly introduce them before I ask you my next question. Dr. Iroro Stephen Izu is a political economics and development expert. He's also a lecturer at the Department of Political Science and International Relations at the University of Abuja. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Izu. Thank you. We also have Professor Muhammad Kabiru Isa, and he's a professor of governance, Department of Local Government and Development Studies at the Faculty of Administration, Ahmadu Bello University in Zaria. Professor Isa, thank you once again for joining us. Please let me pause you for a while and then take this question from His Excellency, and I return to you in just a moment. Your Excellency, we talked about the quality of leadership at the local government levels, and I'd like to just add that we know that qualification and age already enshrined in our constitution. The power to now elect, because that's an elected position, it's now in the hands of the electorate and of course the politicians. So that is another serious matter, to address the gap that you have identified. But let us look at the role that the executives play in terms of development, in achieving development, the programs and policies that state executives enunciate. We've discovered, and the guests that appeared on this program also discovered and also say that programs and policies are a total disconnect from the people. The executives, go on to implement programs, projects that do not really or directly address the needs, the wants of the people. Do you agree with that?
I agree 100% with that. And that's why I told you about coming in without a particular goal and vision of what you want to do. If you know exactly from the beginning what you want to do, that's it. But if you want to learn on the job, that's what you run into these kind of things. If I don't need a high-rise building, I don't need a high-rise building. If I'm building a road, actually, that overhead bridges and the rest of that in an area where how many vehicles actually travel, I don't need it. I spent most of my life in the US. There are bigger cities than. I went to school in Terre Haute, Indiana. Terre Haute, Indiana is, you can compare it almost to Lagos. Not one high-rise skyscraper, all these loops. Houston happens to be where I live and work, happens to be a place where probably we have some of the most complicated, road network. They need it. That's the reason why they have it. In Terre Haute, where I went to school, they don't need it. So I think it depends again on the vision. That's what I'm telling you. So when I came into Nasarawa State, I came to realize, what do we need? So many places where there is huge agricultural activity, mining activity, have no roads. Areas where, for instance, we have tourism site, have no roads. So nobody will be interested in going there. So we concentrated in some of those roads. And then a lot of, we were having so much problem of power. Life here at the state capital, we were getting power for 2 hours. So I now focus on ensuring that life here has 24 hours power supply by working with the federal government, by ensuring our 330 substation was ready, so we take each one of these things, and address them based on what I already understood. I didn't come in as a governor until I engaged KPMG to carry out almost 6 months of work to understand what are the problems of Nasarawa State, what are the prospects, how do we approach them, do we have the resources? If we don't, how do we get the resources? So that's how I came in with the report. And on arrival, I ensured that I came with a document called Nasarawa Economic Development Strategy. It was actually extracted out of that report that I received from KPMG. And then I set up a committee that should look at me directly in the face and advise me if I'm not implementing it right. The chairman of that committee is Professor Konya JSAN from Ogun State. I knew he was somebody that would look at me straight in the face. He doesn't need anything from me and tell me, Governor, I'm not from your state, but this thing you are following is not right. So those are the kind of people we brought so that they will do that. And they kept guiding us. and do that. Just yesterday, I signed an MOU with Sarah Africa Agriculture, to come in and develop. So we have signed so many MOUs. We have brought in so many investors. Today in Nasarawa State, we have a company. We say we are still of solid minerals. We are not processing any of the solid minerals before we came. Today, 30% of the marble that you find in the market is coming from Nasarawa State. So they go to the quarry, they mine it, they bring it out, they process it, they polish it, and it goes straight from that company to the market. So if you go to the airport in Lagos, the new airport, you go to the new airport in Abuja, you go and see the marble. That marble that you are seeing on the floor came from Nasarawa State. So at least today, we need to know what we need, and then go ahead with that, rather than coming with all kinds of programs and this and that and things that we don't need.
Well, Your Excellency,
Yes.
I'll take the benefit of my legal experience to discharge and acquit you on on the charges of lack of focus on development at the subnational level, at least with regard to your jurisdiction. Because the way you have encapsulated it doesn't appear to be a widespread consideration amongst the subnational entities, which is why, again, we're having this conversation. We did say that we were not tab brushing all the subnational entities. We know there are 36 states and 774 local governments in the federation, of course, 6 of which are area councils in the federal capital territory. I know that subnational entities are different. So they face different electorate and so on and so forth. Some of these, well, not altogether useless, but not so useful projects are undertaken because somebody has an eye on re-election and so on and so forth. But the ideas that you are dishing out this morning, are there ideas that on a peer basis you discuss with your brother governors at the governors forum? Because when these statistics come out, so many poor Nigerians, XYZ, increased level of crime, poor educational outcomes, and so on and so forth, food insecurity. I mean, it's not, President Muhammadu Buhari can take some of the flack, but of course, this is coming from the subnational entities.
And we have them even in Nasarawa State. I wouldn't exempt ourselves. We have lots of some of these same problems you are talking about. I came in and then set up a committee to carry out a baseline survey of our education, of our schools. We had 1,352 primary schools. Believe me, only 20% of them you could actually call primary schools. So there are 80% of them. Therefore, I have done the best I can. Even if I stay 8 years, I will not be able to do all the schools. I can only do part, and somebody will come and continue from there. Our former governor, Tanko Almakula, did fantastic job, but he brought in maybe about the 20% that we had. So these are the kinds of problems. So some of them are continuous, but as governors, when we come in, one, we should be willing, to start from somewhere where somebody stopped, not to start at the bottom line again, another foundation, because those are some of the problems that we are having. So if you come and say, I'm going to build from where this person has stopped, I came in and discovered so many abandoned projects. Right now, we have completed nearly every one of them. And that time, the people were making a mockery of me. He doesn't know how to come up with his new project. He is only completing other projects. Yet, for instance, our airport close to 10 billion was already spent. And you wanted me to abandon that airport? And I needed only about 2 to 3 billion to complete it. So I completed the airport. If I was the person from the beginning, will I have built an airport? Maybe not. But now money already has sunk into it, therefore I must complete it. And then, so I now, after completing, I say, what do we do with it? Because we can't spend this amount of money and just abandon it. So I've approached the federal government. This is an excellent alternative airport to Nnamdi Azikiwe because it's the closest airport to Abuja. Federal government, please, let's do it. Let's take it. And then we kept going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Finally, the president gave approval that they will take it over. Say, okay, after taking it over, you can use it really as a security airport. It will take care of Abuja. Some of your cargo planes can go there. So now we're in the process, which was started by Tanko Almakula, constructing a road from that airport that will reduce most of it directly, towards Kefi. That way, anybody actually that has alternative can fly and just drop there and take maybe about 1.5 hours to Abuja. So these are issues that you have to look at them clearly. And if you are carrying them out, believe me, within the state, because people are used to certain ways of doing things, people will criticize, and then somebody is not getting what he's supposed to get with the old, because even this process that is not working, there are beneficiaries.
Sure.
There are people who are benefiting. So if you don't do it that way, you will get criticized by those people. So you just have to focus and just keep going. So,
okay, let's bring in Dr. Izo into our conversation. Dr. Izo, if you're still with us, hello, Dr. Izo, are you there? Okay. I just want us to understand the concept of poverty. Some people say, whether you look at poverty from the point of view of development, or from the point of view of wealth creation and all that, it has come to stay. It is part of the lives of those who wish it. And they say that this is because it has become a mindset of the leadership, evident in the fact that when our leaders want good health care, they fly out. When they want quality education, they fly out. When they want good life, comfort, they fly out. Whereas here in the country, you and I know what it is to get quality education. You know what it is to access quality health care in any of the hospitals. And I'm asking, if this is so, is there anything that we can do regardless of the quality of the people we elect into the various tiers of government? Can't hear you. You may have to unmute your microphone so that we can hear you loud and clear. Hello, doctors. Are you there? Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. We can hear you now. We can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, I was saying that let me join the anchors, you and Kingsley, and to commend the candor of the governor of Nasarawa State and Your Excellency for deconstructing the issue very, very dispassionately. Now, we know that there are several states, several governors who cannot boldly, talk the way you are talking regarding issues that concern the local government performance in their states, and of course, and the issues that border on development generally. Now, because we have traveled, across the length and breadth of the country, and we know the reality on ground. I'm a very familiar person to Nasarawa State. I travel Nasarawa State often. I crisscross the state, and I know that you are doing your bit. However, I want to state that poverty, as I mentioned on Monday, has become weaponized in Nigeria. Many politicians in Nigeria still have that tendency of desperation. They are desperate, to capture power. They are desperate to retain power. They are even desperate to regenerate power when they lose it. So because of that desperation, because of that desperado, mentality, one of the ways, they can, continue to recycle themselves is to make the people impoverished. So this idea that we're trying to discountenance, this idea of a lack of development at the local government level or at the subnational level, to many of them, it is not a matter of concern, because as a politician, as a leader that is elected by the people, now somebody said that development simply means freedom. Freedom from lack and want, freedom, from poverty, freedom from ignorance. But on daily basis, we see that Nigerians, keep on being put in the drag nets, of poverty. Nigeria was not the headquarters of poverty before. Bangladesh, India, and some of these countries will be the headquarters of poverty before. How did we now take that position of being the headquarters of poverty? It's because of what Shina Shebe said, the failure or the unwillingness of leaders, to take up the responsibility of the demands of their office. So I believe, that the issue of capacity, the issue of commitment, by some of the governors, towards developing the local areas is very, very key. Secondly, I want to say that the local governments we have in Nigeria, they are not local enough. They're not local enough. I'm saying this because against the backdrop of, for instance, United States of America, in the US, we have 85,000 local government areas, what they call local county areas. 85,000. In Nigeria, we have 774 local government areas. They are not local enough. That is why you see many governors creating development areas, which are not really, developing the areas because they are not constitutional. They are not. They don't have the legal muscle to actually engender the development that they want to, and bring about. So what I'm trying to say is this: the local governments in Nigeria, one, need to be increased to make them more local. Because if you go to my local government area, for instance, from my hometown to the local government headquarters is very far. It's a distance. Look at Nasarawa State, for instance. Karo local government area is too big to be one local government area. So the local government areas, they need to be further broken, and increased in number so that they can be more local and gender development at the local government areas, as we want it to be. And secondly, they need to be autonomous. The issue of autonomy cannot be overflowed. We have talked about it severally, but it cannot be overflowed. If the local government areas are made more local and autonomy is granted to them, the issue of poverty, addressing the local issues, the constraints, the challenges, the restraints of the local people, become more direct. Third, I believe that local government, chairmen should be elected the same way, governors are elected. 4 years, not 3 years. The reason why some governors have hijacked the local government, machinery, to their own, advantage and to the disadvantage of the local people is because they are the ones that superintend over the conduct of election in the local government areas. And so some of them put their cronies there, people who lack capacity. We have seen local government chairmen who cannot even communicate very well, who cannot articulate anything that can bring about development. So I believe local government tenure should be increased to.
Okay, Dr. Iroro, thank you very much. And happily, you were part of the conversation first time and second time, and you have raised also very critical issues. I just wanted to weigh in before we bring in Professor Mohammed Issa, who's a professor of local government at Ahmadu Bello University, in terms of one of the issues is raised, namely increasing the number of local government areas. The governor himself talked about that. We know what happened in Lagos. We still have the local government development area councils or something in Lagos. We have it in Nasarawa. But the governor also raised the issue of the costs of maintaining the bureaucracy in those locations. So if that then becomes a consideration, then of course it means that you'll be spending more on overheads and the so-called recurrent expenditure rather than on development. But of course, the point you noted about bringing development closer to the people is taken. We're all aware that the 774 local governments we have now were created during the military era, including the states that we also have. And the location of the headquarters of the local governments, even of the state capitals. Delta, for instance, where you come from, you know that there was a big fight, whether it was the real Delta that was created with capital in Asaba, or the capital should have been in Warri. So some of these local government headquarters were put there for reasons not necessarily of efficiency or otherwise. Dr. Iroro, thanks. We're going to come back to you later in the course of the conversation. Now let's bring in Professor Mohammed Kabir Isa of Ahmadu Bello University. Professor Isa, you've listened to your brother, academic, as well as His Excellency respond. I earlier said that he's touched on some very critical issues, leadership, recruitment process, and the candor with which he is taking that. And he says that sometimes, I mean, for instance, you find a local government chairman or a local government operative, and you say, this is not the kind of person I ordinarily would have had, but I'm stuck with the person. So be it. What do you think can be done further to ramp up development at the subnational levels? Prof.
Thank you, Kingsley. It's a pleasure to be part of the third part of the program this morning. Now, first, Your Excellency, I want to assure you that you people are seriously raping and abusing the Constitution in the way and manner you work with the Area Development Council. If you go back to the Supreme Court judgment of 2006, in the case between the federal government and Lagos State, Abia State, Niger State, and a host of other states, and the 2006 Supreme Court judgment, the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria only recognizes existing local government. So it does not recognize any structure called Area Development Council or Development Council or whatever name you choose to call it. Now, Lagos State government fell back to, you remember, I think between 2003, 4, 5, 6, many states, in fact, I remember Kaduna State about 59 local government, Lagos State about 67 and so on. But with that Supreme Court judgment, many of the states ran back and reverted back to the old local government. Now, part of the implication of the Supreme Court judgment is that you cannot use money meant for allocated to the constitutionally recognized local government as listed in the first schedule for some area development council created by the state because they are not recognized in the Constitution. That's one thing to worry about. And that's one thing I want governors and the country to worry about. And this is the prank and the basis upon which we are calling for local government autonomy. Now, another thing which we need to correct, that's Decree 36, which is the basis of the 1999 Constitution. We use Decree 36 to elect the president, the governors, and so on. It is the transition decree. And chapter 1 to 5 or 6 of that decree is on local government. In fact, the name of the decree is Local Government and Basic Transition Decree. In that decree, sections of the decree mention about tenure of local government chairman, the executive powers of local government chairman, how to impeach the chairman, and the functions of the local government. Because they found out that that would be a duplication, since the 1999 Constitution is, if you like, is an uplift or upgrade of this 1979 Constitution. So that decree subsists, except where it runs contrary or contradictory to the provisions of the 1999 Constitution. But governors have turned blind eye to that decree. Thirdly, there is a local government financial memorandum. Just like if you go into the federal government, you have a financial regulation, you have a general rule, you have a financial rule. In the state service, there's a general rule, and there's a, in the local government, there's a document called the financial memorandum, which guides how local government finances should be operated. Now, because they want to truncate autonomy for local government, that document has been set aside. If you go, I can assure you, to all the 774 local government, only a few have that document in existence. And this document was shared out in 1999. It was shared out in 2004. I was part of it, and I know. But if you go to local governments now, I did a program recently, and I asked all the people in the audience, do you know a financial memorandum? Majority of them have never seen it. They've only heard about it. And so the financial memorandum is the basis upon which the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit works, is the basis upon which the ICPC works, is the basis upon which the EFCC engages the local government. But if you go to the local government, some chairmen don't know about it. They don't know what it is. Some councillors don't know. Even some heads of the department don't know that. Now, but that again aside, let me also dispel a problem, which the governor amplified. The local government is not an employment generation agency. If you look at the basis upon which we created local government is not an employment generation agency. It's a service providing agency. But because the local governments are not attractive to the right qualified type of people, Doctors don't work there. Good people are not attracted. The pay is bad. And then the working condition is bad. There's poor service, poor pay. And then politicians have turned the local government into a, if you like, a place for paying back party loyalists for supporting them. So that was why, for example, if you find in Kaduna State, El-Rufai found out that many schools exist on ground in paper, but in reality, they don't exist. In paper, they exist, they don't exist on the ground because they have been created to favor party loyalists. So you have ward chairman having his wife employed in primary schools and in the local government secretariat. You have the chairman local government employed, the state chairman of party, and so on. So it's a gratification agency, if you like. That is what we have turned the local government. And a large part of it is because the local government, through our previous constitutional processes and transition program, have become a very veritable basis for election in Nigeria. And that is the most important thing. And that is why I have talked about the fact that, you see, again, Kingsley, we cannot talk about subnational development as if the subnational exists out of a frame of the national project called Nigeria. We cannot successfully talk about subnational development outside the main frame of the development. In fact, if you look at the constitution and the provisions of the constitution, especially the fourth schedule of the 1999 constitution, local government is the basis of national planning in Nigeria. National planning, if it exists, must start at the local government level. All the local government plans constitute the state plan. All the state plan becomes the basis of the national plan. So the local government have been hamstrung, twisted, and stifled out of existence to create a basis to continue to plunder. This is my view, and this is very true. I've covered all the major parts of the country, particularly the northern state, and I know all the local government, the extreme part. For example,
all right, Professor Mohammed Issa, thank you very much for the views that you have raised. Let me interject before my colleague Claire comes to pose the next question to His Excellency. We need to clear a few things. Under our legal system, you talked about the decree that was transitional for the introduction of the Fourth Republic, namely the 1999 Constitution, as subsequently amended. We have 4 amendments to the Constitution. Once a transitional law, in this case a decree, has achieved its purpose, it falls into abeyance, which is why if you were to go into the composite laws of the Federation of Nigeria as at 2004, you are unlikely to find the decree to which you referred, which means that law is no longer in existence. What is in existence is the constitution that it brought into being. And if you have reference to Section 7 of the 1999 Constitution, it guarantees a democratically elected local government system. And the Constitution also says, that is 1999 Constitution, after the transitional provisions, that state houses of assembly are empowered to make laws for the operation and governance of the local government system, but all within the ambit of the many provisions in the Constitution. For instance, if you look at Section 162, that is the sharing of funds, local government joint account, the fourth schedule to which you refer to, which is functions of local government. So every other provision in the pre-existing decrees, they have fallen into abeyance. Anyone who seeks to make recourse to them can borrow from the provisions therein, but in enacting fresh provisions. So local government laws that we have now are laws passed by the respective state houses of assembly. All right, Claire.
Thank you for the clarification. Of course, Kingsley is the lawyer here, so we always leverage his experience. Thanks, Kingsley.
Thank you.
So let's bring in His Excellency now, and I would like to bring this conversation, closer, to him and closer to you at home. Now, the recent data released by the NBS, that's the Multidimensional Poverty Index. We are all, aware of the statistics. More than 61% of Nigerians, of our total population are said to be poor, multidimensionally poor in different areas. Now, the drivers, according to NBS, are education, food insecurity, health, and I think nutrition, thereabout. What is Nasarawa's own share of this rate, especially in the area of education? Because according to that data, between 2018 and 2019, the out of school from Nasarawa State, went beyond, maybe in thousands, maybe 20,000 or more, and that as a result of, conflicts. How are you addressing that?
Thank you very much. I think before I do that, let me take on one item that the professor also mentioned. I'm happy that Kinsley has addressed most of the legal parts that he had mentioned. I think the professor has spoken as a professor, and sometimes it is not necessarily exactly the way it is going to go, when you come into the practical aspect of what it is. Like if you go out there, to the market, sometimes all of us have gone to school. Some of these theories that we apply, especially some of us who read engineering, a lot of those engineering theories, if you apply them on some bridges, the bridge will just collapse. So no, I'm telling you. So sometimes you have to take this calculation and bring that theory and do that, and then add the practical nature depending on the environment that you are able to find yourself. So I think that is the issue, because now, to answer part of what he said, because he said local government is not an area where you should employ. Local government is not meant for employment. So all these things are theories. You understand? Because now on the other side, you mentioned about poverty. You want to reduce poverty. You want to do that. By the way, I'm one of the members of the steering committee, constituted by Mr. President, chaired by Mr. Vice President, for this poverty reduction and growth strategy. As a matter of fact, I'm the co-chair of the technical working group, that is putting that together. And we know what we are seeing and what we are going through and how to address that. And like you rightly mentioned, education is key, is part of it. Now, coming back to the part you asked me, on the area of education, and you're right, our out of school is of big concern to us. And some of them are these almajiris. For us in Nasarawa State, I don't know other states, but for us in Nasarawa State, one of the things that constituted the huge amount of these people are actually the almajiris that we see on the streets. Not all of them are from other states. Some of them are even from our own state. People are either out of poverty or out of blackout of mind, lack of vision or so. People continue to, I always touch on this, and people criticize me being a Muslim. I shouldn't be criticizing that a lot. I don't think people have a responsibility to bring so many children to the world if you cannot take care of them. I say this and I get criticized by my fellow Muslims, because the bottom line really is that we have to go in and look at, somebody has too many children and he can't take care of these children. So that's how we end up with exactly what you are saying here, because he can't pay for their school fees to go to school. I know how many messages I receive every morning.
Yes, especially the expressway emptying into cafe.
Yes.
You find them lined.
Well, you're lucky you don't come to Lafia. We wish the university is in Lafia. That way you can also see what you see in Lafia. So these are the things that we go through. They are of big concern. And are you saying the northern governors, for instance, because this is even more in the north, than other places. I have looked at the poverty index that you have mentioned. Maybe the worst 4 or 5 states are northern states.
Yeah.
So that's what we go through continuously. And so we try to address them as northern governors. How do we do that? How do we address that? How do we do that? And the number one hit is education, you have mentioned. That's the number one. So, and if we don't address the education aspect very well, it goes to affect so many other things. In Nasarawa, I think we're a little bit lucky in the sense that we're very close to Abuja. So some of the benefits of Abuja actually come to us. So it's a complementary thing for us. So some good things from Abuja, we get affected. Some bad things from Abuja also come to us. So it's both ways. But on education, I think it's beneficial in that case, because like one of them mentioned, Karu should have been 3 or 4 local government council. But now look at how much revenue is Karu generating. Due to the lack of vision, a lack of capacity, a lack of competence that we are talking about, how much revenue is. If I tell you, sometime you will cry. You say, Karu? How can Karu generate that kind of revenue? Before we came in, the entire Nasarawa state was generating about 500 million a month, IGR. We are lucky now, we are a little bit about 1.5. But Nasarawa, as a state, we should be generating 3 to 5 billion naira a month. So these are all some of the issues.
But you have budgeted, I think, I don't know if it's the highest, 2023 appropriation bill. You had 37 billion, if I'm right, if I'm wrong, correct.
37%.
37, for education. What is that supposed to address, basically?
Well, supposed to address all our inadequacies. I mentioned to you, out of the 1,300 plus primary schools that we have, only 20% of them you will call primary school. So what is lacking? Why are the other ones not called? Either because they don't have the teachers, qualified teachers. They don't have the structures that you can call. There are so many of these schools they don't understand science. So, for instance, somebody to graduate from primary school without even understanding basic science, it's a problem. Now it goes even to our secondary schools. And that's why when we came, we concentrated. Again, when I concentrated, I got criticized by the opposition. I say, I want to concentrate on, we don't have teaching hospital in the whole of Nasarawa State, as close as we are to Abuja. Okay, we're just trying to develop one now. So that's why if you go in, you will see a lot of our primary healthcare units are being treated almost like general hospitals because people don't have. The two hospitals, major hospitals, we have the FMC in Kefi and the specialist hospital in Lafia are so congested that you will think it's a combination of 5 or 6 teaching hospitals. So these are the issues. And do we have doctors in Nasarawa State? Majority of the doctors we have in Nasarawa State are not even from Nasarawa State. So sometimes I get held hostage, because of these kinds of things. So we say we'll concentrate on science. We'll develop science schools. We'll do that, at least 2 in every senatorial zone, so that we can focus on that. We'll concentrate on, in order to reduce this poverty, using education, we'll go ahead and develop some of the vocational technical institutions so that people will be self-employed. We'll bring people and become welders, fitter machinists, air conditioner, refrigerators, this radio mechanics and the rest of that, so that they can go in and be able to eat and get something. They don't have to wait for government job or company jobs.
All right, Your Excellency, and our other 2 guests, Dr. Iroro and Professor Issa. Gentlemen, we're going to take a short break now. When we return, we'll continue with the conversation.
The counsel of our fathers.
I believe we have fought one civil war too many in this country. So those who experience it will run away from it.
Nigerian youth, let's build our nation together.
To every politician, as the campaigns gain momentum and passions begin to rise, remember, the errors of your opponents do not make you a success. Do not run down your opponent and inflame passions to violence between and among your supporters. What counts is what you plan to do for the electorate and how you intend to relieve the sufferings and bring succor. Nigeria is in dire need of patriotic leaders at all levels, leaders who will make national development their priority. Concentrate on telling the electorate what you intend to do when you get into office. Focus on making your vision clear to the electorate. Don't engage in verbal abuses, fake news, or speeches. Keep dealing with issues that will bring progress. You win the hearts and minds of the people by being above board, by being civil, patriotic, and showing empathy. Let's join hands to make the 2023 elections peaceful. A message from the National Orientation Agency.
Critical military objectives of total defeats of the terrorists in the Northeast is already been achieved. Synchronized group and air operations have continued to inflict huge casualties on the terrorists, and have been forcing many of them, including their commanders and emirs, to surrender in droves with members of their families. Whilst areas where terrorists hitherto had some freedom of actions are being cleared, and socio-economic life is gradually returning to the most parts of the Northeast. As well, internal displaced persons are now returning to their ancestral homes to start life all over in dignity under safe and more secure environment.
This message is brought to you from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
The security situation in Nigeria has been reasonably stable in spite of activities of unpatriotic elements engaged in various criminal activities around the country. Daily situation reports coming in from states. 2 months ago, it has shown relative peace on many of our highways, such as Abuja, Kaduna, Kaduna Birnin Gwari, Sokoto, Zamfara, Zamfara, Kaduna.
This message is brought to you from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, you're welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. All our three guests are still with us, and I want to return to His Excellency, the Executive Governor of Nasarawa State, Engineer Abdullahi Sule. Engineer Sule, you tell us something about the persuasion for what you are doing, or the perspective that you have. Are you driven by a private sector background? Were you always in politics? That's one. Perhaps I should pause there, and then before I bring in the whole issue of local government development, let me bring it in just briefly so you can keep it in a KIV. One, local governments are supposed to be the fulcrum of development at the state level. So you look at the functions in the fourth schedule to the Constitution, and then you also look at the entire concept of development of a state. They are supposed to be part of it. But the quarrel that we have had is that local governments have been emasculated. A number of their functions have been taken over. I mean, look, just waste management, for instance. We know that some state governments are bragging with having waste management authorities and so on and so forth. But these are local duties that so that the state can be concerned about higher other things. Provision of schools, for instance, teacher education, teachers recruitment, and so on and so forth. Again, we're talking about, citing the example of your state. I don't know how many of your brother colleagues can beat their chest and openly say, this is what we have and this is what we are dealing with. So, one, explain so that people can benefit from your vision or your attitude to say, look, how did you get into all of this? And why are you doing this? And the second aspect, if we have time, my colleague doesn't pick that up, to say, look, why is it that local governments continue to be emasculated from the development of the state?
Thank you very much, Kinsley. I was going back to the fact that, I gave an example with myself. And I said, I'm one of those, or shall I say I was one of those, that always criticize the politicians. Even while I was in the US when Bush was president, Clinton became president, he defeated Bush, and not to say anything, I saw the lies and things like that, and I never liked politics. I always thought politics, this is not even Nigeria now, even in the US, So that's the kind of belief that I actually had, and I never liked politics. And I was saying that, how did I get into this? The first time, I think, a former vice president one time came and asked me, he said, you are going to run for governor. I said, governor where? I said, I can't. I'm not a politician, this and that. And of course, I went back to my private sector practice. Then at one point, I listened to what Governor El-Rufai, I always make reference to this statement, that he said. And he kept saying, if he wasn't talking to me, it was a video. And he said, if all the good people keep saying that politicians are bad, this and that, and then they run away from politics, they are not interested, so bad people will continue to be in politics and will continue to have bad leaders. And the good people will continue to be good, but then you will be under the bad people. So he said it's necessary, for that. And I took that statement serious. I watched that video over and over, maybe like 50 times now, even though I know I was going to hear the same thing that he was saying. And I think it's a wonderful thing that he did. And this is a wonderful thing that Nigerians actually should take off from. People should get together. We should have good people to come and compete. It's not going to be easy. Nobody ever says it's easy anyway. For people who have vision, people who have the capacity, they have the competence, and they have commitment about this country to come and run for these offices. You know, if I have somebody better than me coming to compete with me and they beat me, believe me, I will congratulate them and then move on. You know, that's my attitude towards this. You know, so I think that's the way people should come in and then go for these offices, win their elections, and not go back and mix up with the rest of the bunch. You know, continue to be focused and drive development in this country. So I think that is one thing that is going to help us, rather than just sitting on the fence continuously criticizing politicians, abusing politicians, because that is not taking us anywhere. You know, so if you think that somebody has something to offer, come in. You know, do it, practice. And they say, okay, no, it's a question of money. You know, they need money. Yes, they need money. I as a governor, I just finished my fundraising. So I say I'm a sitting governor, but I want to use some resources in order for me. So I did a fundraising. I invited people. You know, people actually generated some resources for me. And that's what we are using today, you know, running for this office. You know, so I think those are the kinds of things that people should do. You know, when President Buhari came in and people wanted him, he didn't have money. He didn't have any money, but his good record that people can tell, this and that, people generated money for him. I remember the video going around, you know, that went wild, that one woman was able to put together, you know, 1 million naira, and people didn't even know she ever had 1 million naira, and she donated, you know, to this because she wanted good leadership. So I think those are the kinds of things that I will address in that. And it's only this kind of people that come in, not somebody that is coming into government to be rich, you know, but somebody that is coming in truly, you know, to help and be able to have vision, and we understand the vision of that person and will drive exactly where we're going. So that's the way I see it.
Yeah, the other question, so Claire was going to take that up. Okay. I know we're getting pressed. Yeah, so look, why are local governments, as it were, emasculated from the development agenda of the state?
I think part of it is what I said earlier, because we all see as governors, you know, and that's probably where the professor is right, you know, and I think I answered it earlier on. So we all see most of these. If I know a local government chairman doesn't have the capacity, which is my fault, doesn't have the capacity to drive, and we have him there, I have to go in there to make sure I do the work, because if he doesn't do a good job in that local government, I get blamed. Today, if local government, we give them their money, okay? We allow them with their money to go and pay salaries. If they are not able to pay the salaries, the governor is blamed.
Okay, yes, I know you spoke to this earlier on.
Yes.
We're just trying to fast track our conversation. Okay. In your budget, again, I go back to your 2023 budget for 2023 fiscal year. The difference between your current expenditure and your capital expenditure is quite wide. I think 60 to 30-something percent. And your recurrent expenditure, I know when you came into office, you promised we're going to grow the economy and create jobs. But the weight of the recurrent expenditure shows that government is still, you know, bearing the burden of employment and payments and all that. How is your plans of growing the economy doing, even within, you know, that kind of budget?
When we came in, we didn't have, government was the main source of employment in the state. We didn't have any industry in Nasarawa state. We didn't have any big companies that could employ. We didn't have any of these things. So as a result of that, you know, we were having these kind of problems, you know, back and forth. Today, things have changed a little bit. And if you look at it, that time we focus more on some of these institutions of learning. Today, we have developed most of those institutions. We have developed our secondary schools. We have developed, not 100%, as I kept saying, you know, but we have developed them to a level where we can feel a little more comfort to say that, okay, today we can now change and focus in other areas. So when we were focusing in the other areas, some other areas were suffering, because you mentioned about the percentages of our this. When we came in, the first year, we had 26% of our budget. Second year, we had 31%. Third year, we had 37% of our budget went to education. And this year, we have 25% going into 2023. So you can see that it has gone down significantly because of what we had already achieved. So it is because of what we have achieved that we are now focusing. We have employed 5,000 teachers. You understand? So, you know, definitely your overheads will go up. I told you we are lacking number of teachers. So we had employed. We have brought in more people in the technical area. You know, Nasarawa State was considered, well, Nasarawa State got a gift, a present, you know, an award that we are the best when it comes to primary health care, and vaccination we are number one, and we have been number one in the country. Okay, so all these kinds of things are so people are managing that. So some of our frontline workers, we employed them automatically because they put their life on the line, to take care of some of these COVID victims and the rest of that. Some of them died in Nasarawa State. So we had to employ more of those people that put their life on the line. So that's how our overhead actually is growing, But now we are bringing more and more industries, more and more organizations that are engaging people, are employing people, technical schools are doing that. So we can afford to balance out.
Yeah, Claire, one issue that came up when we had the first two parts of this conversation has to do with the observable poor fiscal controls at the subnational levels, coupled with ostentation. In fact, the example was cited that, look, how many times did Sir Ahmadu Bello, Emma Okpara, Chief Obafemi Awolowo, or Dennis Osadebe in the Midwest, how many times did we hear or see them chartering aircraft to be going around different parts of the country? But that today, it looks like the norm. Governors are in one location or the other. And a number of them are also buying bulletproof vehicles, sometimes worth 50 million or more. I don't know what the value is. And people are asking questions. Isn't this the money that you could otherwise use, for instance, to beef up the quality of your primary health care centers, provide facilities, and so on and so forth? Happily, you were in the US. The corporate executives that use executive jets are in the business of production, but we're in the business of consumption. How can we reduce this, what some of them described the other day as obscene ostentation that we are seeing from the subnational levels? That is just money that is just going out, and yet we say we have no revenue to deal with development challenges.
I think we'll just allow His Excellency, please take note of this question, because we're coming to you. You take it, and then we'll end our conversation. Let's just, have the last contribution from our guest joining us via Zoom. Dr. Izu, I beg your pardon. If you are still with us, quickly tell us, because Karl Marx did say that the power to change, society lies in the hands of the workers, of the people, of the electorate, and the electoral reform, was meant to give more power to the people so that we're able to elect quality leaders, at the various tiers of government, even as His Excellency and yourselves have also indicated. Do you think that 2023 will change in terms of the use of the mandates, that the electorate have?
Okay, thank you once more. Obviously, we have been able to establish that leadership is still the major obstacle to development at all levels. So especially at the local government level. Now, I am of the opinion that yes, I'm very optimistic that 2023 general election is going to be a watershed general election because of the use of the beavers, the new device that INEC has introduced. That means, and somehow there may be some, a more increased credibility in the electoral process next year. Now, the people, of course, and they have the opportunity of choosing leaders who can better their lot in the future. However, I've also said, that the real issue here is the local government. The local government, their own election is not often is not guaranteed. The sanctity of the elections are not often guaranteed, because the governors, the desperado governors, some of them, I beg your pardon, hijack the process. So if we're talking about presidential level now, for instance, as a governorship level, I can say, yes, the people can determine some kind of change, that will take place. But at the local government level, for now, the people cannot, determine anything except, the beavers, of course, the effect of the beavers can still cascade, to the local government level.
All right, Dr. Iso, thank you. Thank you very much. Let's bring in Professor Issa right now. Professor Issa, what do you think? How can we, because we seem to, put the whole blame on the local, on the leadership at the local government, but that they are not the sole, they are not solely responsible. I mean, it's a collective thing. So how can we use 2023 to change the narrative? Briefly, please.
Thank you very much for bringing me back. Again, I beg to differ slightly. People are looking at the tail end of the process, not at the root and the original organic origin of the process. For me, our political parties are not in the real sense. They do not fit into the pristine definition of political parties. And so, political parties that we have are political associations. And that is why you have people move from one point to the other. For me, the process, the election process has not thrown up the best of candidates for us because the process has been hijacked. Why are we blind to the fact that all the primaries were done with dollars? Candidates emerge spending money. And why is it so difficult for people to see that the value of the naira dwindled to the dollar? Simply because of primary elections. These are glaring. It's all over the pages of papers. It's there. And we know that the primaries that produce candidates, either at presidential level or at the governorship level or whatever level, were primaries fraught with a lot of irregularities, with a lot of problems because our political parties do not fit in. For example, it beats me that we expect INEC, which is just meant to conduct election, to sensitize people. It is the primary mundane job of political parties to sensitize its followers, to register, to vote. It is the job of political parties to do this. And this is not just theory. This is praxis. This is mixing theory with practice. So for me, the process which produces all the candidates is fraught with a lot of irregularities. So while we're looking at election, election is the tail end of the process. The entire value chain of election is fraught with problems. And that's my view. Now, if you come back to the issue of local government, we need to contextualize local government autonomy. Local government autonomy has political ramification, dimension. It has financial dimension. It has operational and structural dimension. Taking especially, Kingsley, that provisions of Section 7 and Section 8 that you mentioned in the 1999 Constitution. Now, if you look at local government autonomy from the political ramification or dimension, is that, in the process of recruiting who becomes what, when and how at the political level in local government, it is not just the governors. I'm happy Governor Abdullahi mentioned it. It's a problem of elite, local elite in the local government. It's a problem of the state elite. They determine who gets what, who is who. And so that's why my take on the problem of Nigeria, and that's why I said there's a mystification of subnational development. It cannot be contextualized outside the national frame. And that is why I said the solution lies in nation building, state building. Because nation building, you need to build the character of the people. I recall I told you the Chinese, when they did their revolution, they started with a cultural revolution to attack the issue of patriotism and nationalism. And state building is building the right institutions, right structures to be able to push people. So that people believe in Nigeria and people believe in the processes. And if you look,
Professor Issa, thank you. I mean, it's always a delight having you on Good Morning Nigeria. And this aspect of the conversation is going to continue. I mean, we have an elite challenge with us in all ramifications and all the structural and political and economic dimensions to local government issues. These are matters we'll take up subsequently. Let's come back to His Excellency. Your Excellency, my question was KIV by my colleague, namely issues around poor fiscal controls at the state level and ostentation in the midst of misery.
Well, I think it goes back to the same point we keep mentioning since we started this program. Are the people really interested in controlling the fiscal nature? Are they interested? Are the people competent to even check? Do the people have that? Right now, we have teachers at the primary school that cannot even write their lesson notes. At the secondary school that cannot even write their lesson notes. We have all these kinds of things. So we are doing training and retraining and retraining. When I came in as a governor, the first meeting I had with some of the permanent secretaries, I came to realize that if a permanent secretary will actually speak, you will just look like you will just go through the other window, and for me growing up, I knew permanent secretaries are people who had gone through all the various levels and they had excellent capacity. In fact, we had people like the commission then where we used to be Plateau, the commission that were known at the time as some of the people who were super permanent secretaries, Zakari Yakubu and the rest of that. So that's the kind of permanent secretaries I was coming up with, but we don't have that now because of all these challenges that we say we're having along the way. So I think you cannot have that control and supervision if we don't have all the three indices, the qualification and the education. They have the capacity and the commitment of these people to be able to do that. I think that's the bottom line.
All right, Your Excellency, the other aspect of ostentation you didn't quite touch on, but okay. I'm sure there will be another time for us to discuss that because there's a lot of misery and poverty, and we do hope that those who are in charge of the finances will be a bit more mellow. We had low profile during the military era. Obasanjo introduced low profile in the 70s, even when oil was our major source of revenue. On that note, we'd like to thank all our three guests this morning for a very interesting conversation. Always a delight having Dr. Iroro Stephen Izu of Department of Political Science and International Relations at the University of Abuja. You joined us via Zoom and you're on the right side of the screen. On the left side of the screen is Professor Muhammad Kabir Issa, local government expert, always very passionate about the issues and how we can fix our country. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being part of our discussion. Here in the studios, we had His Excellency, the Executive Governor of Nasarawa State, Engineer Abdullahi Sule. As we said, we appreciate your deep candor and your prescription for the way forward so that our country, of course, will have better indices. Thank you for being our guest this morning.
Thank you very much.
All right, and that's Good Morning Nigeria for today and indeed for this week. Thank you for joining us, and always remember to be our partner in our